Welcome to Stories We Love. Stories We Love is about stories we love. We bring you extraordinary people, situations, or circumstances that remind you how much good there is in the world, warm your heart, and inspire you in new ways. I'm your hostess, Lorre, and to get the full playlist of Stories We Love, you can go to storiesweloveshow.com, and there you'll find all the extended playlists and everything like that. We interview people who truly care. Really amazing people, and people who are making a positive difference in this world that benefits this beautiful planet we live on, the people and its creatures. And we want you to know that even just as one person, we all have so much more power than we can even imagine. So stay tuned. Today we get to interview two people that I have the highest admiration and regard for, Lonnie Johnson and Mike McQuary. So welcome, both of you.
Hello, how are you?
I feel phenomenal. Thank you both. And let me just start with Lonnie first. But Lonnie, you are an inventor. You're a NASA scientist, Air Force. There's so many things about you that's amazing. And I want to understand, what was your early childhood like? You grew up in, do you say Mobile or Mobile, Alabama? Mobile, Alabama. And you grew up there during the civil rights. What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, it's just about what you would hear and read about. It was the 60s. Racism was open. As a child growing up in that environment, I knew that there were things I could do and things I couldn't do, places I could go, places I couldn't go, where I could sit, where I couldn't. Those things were just a way of life. The police, even back then, as kids, we never regarded the police as our friend. When we would be out in front of the house in our neighborhood playing stickball or other games in the street, whenever we saw a police car, we would always run and hide just instinctively without even thinking about it, because we just felt that we just grew up that way, and there was just not that kind of trust.
So how, because you seem pretty cool now, right? How was your...
Lonnie's like Karate Man. He cool on the inside.
Okay. Well, what was your family life? What was your family life like in the midst of that? Did you have people who were encouraging you, or how was that?
My role model was my dad, my father. He had served in the military, in the Army during World War II. I admired him greatly to this day. I wish he was around so I could talk to him. There were 6 of us kids, my mother and my father. They remained together all our lives, and in fact, until his death. He was very loyal. He was a assistant superintendent and deacon in our church. We all went to church every Sunday. That was a requirement. Shoes polished, the whole 9 yards. He was a great role model.
Wow. And how old were you when he transitioned?
I had just finished college when he passed. So the success that I'm experiencing now, he never got to see. He was actually, as I said, a great role model. He would work on things around the house whenever he would work on something, work on the car. Or remember one time he was putting in a new bathtub in the bathroom. I was right there watching every move there. He gave me my first lesson in electronics. He taught me how to repair lamps and repair cords on lamps when they would get frayed or broken. And in fact, he brought me my first electronic instrument, which was just a little tester that could tell when the circuit was closed or open, or if there was a break in a wire or something. But that was, he took me as far as he could. After that, as I got older, I got more and more curious. I started learning things, going to the library on my own to learn things.
So let me get this straight. Other kids are getting Hot Wheel cards, you're getting a circuit tester.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I love that. That's so unusual, but it makes so much sense. So was your dad trained in engineering or something like that, or he just had a natural aptitude for it?
He just had a natural aptitude. No, in fact, he never finished high school.
Wow. And then you, were you the only, you have 5 other siblings, right? Were you the only one that would, watch whatever he's doing, or were the other kids also interested, or it was just you that was weird like that?
It was just me. That
Where
was
were you in the pecking order, Lonnie?
I'm number 3. Let's see, my youngest sister teaches music. She taught music until she retired. I have one brother who's an architect and one who is an engineering technician.
Wow, I love it. So a very bright family, it sounds like. And then your mom, was she
Well, I'll say work-oriented family.
okay? Well, when you're working in something, if you're interested in it, you tend to get quite educated in it too, and it opens up the brain. How was your mom for you? Like, what was that? What was she like?
Well, mom was great. She was, dad would go to work, mom was at home, and she took care of the house and the kids. That was her role, and that's what she did. When we got into high school, she started taking a course in to become a nurse's aide. So when we got old enough, she started working outside the house as well, and that, of course, helped the family financially.
And when you're, playing stickball, watching your dad, it sounds like you had such a beautiful relationship with both your parents. It sounds like.
Yeah, and my grandmother was there too. I actually spent a good bit of my time with my grandmother, back and forth between my parents and my grandmother. Quite often would spend the night there, and just enjoyed that life as well. There I got to be a single child, an only child.
Those little brief moments of that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So it sounds like you had a pretty stable family life. And then, like, when did you realize, oh, I'm interested in science? When did that happen, and how did that happen?
Well, I've been interested and curious about how things worked. And I used to take my toys apart to look inside, and my siblings' toys apart. That goes back as far as I can remember. It's always tinkering and building things. I think it was in the 6th grade. I think I started to really focus on that more.
When did you decide to make the rocket?
Well, the rocket, 9th grade or so was, let's see, I was in the 6th grade when, in 62, when President Kennedy said we're going to put a man on the moon before the decade was out. I watched that speech, was very intrigued by it, thinking that, geez, by the time the decade was out, I was going to be really old.
Be too late to contribute.
But I got interested in rockets and learned to mix rocket fuel, and was working on a robot, and I just got really, really into science back then. So yeah, my friends would all be playing, and I mean, I had a pretty balanced childhood. Come to think of it, we used to play, stickball and football, all of that.
Blow up the kitchen. That was a fun game of yours. Blow up the kitchen.
That wasn't a game, but made kites and flew kites,
So it sounds like you had a stable family and a community in your family with all those brothers and sisters, but also a really cool, fun community that your friends were, that you could play with, and have fun with.
We did all of that. Mike was just referring to my experiments in the kitchen.
Yes,
Well,
tell me more.
when I got interested in rockets, and I went to the library and I learned how to mix rocket fuel, I can remember very vividly reading, okay, I got one ingredient, I got this ingredient, and then it said this other ingredient, I didn't know what it was. And so I was stuck. And so must have been months, and I didn't know what to do. And then one day my mother sent me to the drugstore rather, to pick up a prescription for her. And while I was waiting on the pharmacist, I was just randomly walking the aisles in the drugstore and reading the bottles. Not expecting to see that ingredient on the shelf, but I did see it there. And, oh, there it is, you know. And so I bought some and took it home, and lo and behold, I was able to mix the rocket fuel. Eventually, I got pretty good at it, and initially I just mixed the powders, but then the instructions really called for heating it, the powders, and it would melt and turn into this tar-like material that you would pour into the bottom of the rocket, into the cylinder, the rocket body of the rocket. And so I was mixing the rocket fuel in the kitchen on the stove, and it caught fire. and when I first looked, I saw a little spark right at the edge of the pot, and I knew that there was no way to stop it. The only thing I could do was back away, and the flames were shooting up, and smoke and flames all over the kitchen. Yeah, I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. It was so thick.
Oh, wow.
It was really, really scary. So I knew I was in trouble.
But apparently it didn't deter you because you kept going, right? But go ahead, what were you saying?
Well, what happened was, I was totally paranoid, and back then corporal punishment was okay. And so I put on 2 pair of pants knowing that there was
weapon was coming.
What was coming, that's right.
You didn't put in a what are those called? A telephone book? A small telephone book there too? That's what we did. But go ahead.
But no, I did put on 2 pair of pants though. So waiting on my dad to get home, and he got home and he saw what had happened. He looked at me and says, "You're gonna have to mix that outside from now on." And he brought me a hot plate, and and I was able to continue my curiosity and exploring. By the time I got into the 12th grade, I really decided I wanted a really big project. Actually, I started working on my robot when I was in the 11th grade. And
so, go ahead, talk about the robot a little bit, because Mike had mentioned it and I wanted to hear more. Is this part of that story that you're saying?
I think Lonnie and I had one of the favorite TV show in common, Lost in Space.
I used to watch it.
Will Robinson had a robot. Lonnie figured he wanted one.
Wow, that's so cool.
I wanted to have my own robot, and nobody told me that the robots on TV that I was watching had people inside. So I just assumed that I could just build a robot. All I needed to do was start working on it.
I think we have to change that that saying, ignorance is bliss, to ignorance is freaking brilliant. I love that.
I have this theme that I, sometimes when I talk to kids, I talk about the whole concept of having a vision and then making that vision a reality. And this is something that human beings do very well. We are great problem solvers. That's what we do. We're designed to solve problems. And that's why we push technology forward so aggressively, because we envision ways of doing things better, and then we turn those visions into reality. That's what we do.
And Lonnie, I think throughout your life and career, you've heard so many times that can't be done.
Yeah.
I mean, later we'll tell the story about being thrown out of some of the finest offices in Washington, D.C. when you presented the Jtech.
Yeah, some of the highest places in the country.
Yeah, but I think that's been a theme. When Lonnie hears you can't do that, he doubles down. I mean,
well, just what you were saying, Lonnie, and sorry to interrupt, but just what you were saying, I don't know why my parents let us go on our bikes all day. That's something that you can't do, but you were allowed to do it, and you got that taste of freedom, I think, and that taste of, okay, I can go beyond what's allowed. I can do something that I'm not supposed to do, and I'm kind of okay with it. And no, it's nothing terrible is happening in this time. I'm having fun. I'm with my friends. I'm doing things I like. Don't you think that might have set an energy in you of well, they have this rule, but I'm kind of immune or something like that? I don't know. What is your take on that?
Well, I think you're hitting on something that I think is very important, that, the whole idea of reaching beyond what you would consider a limitation. I think now, if my parents had not allowed that, I would not have been doing it, but it was, but they allowed it, so it was okay. But the idea of doing things that people assume people will always tell you can't do stuff, or that won't work, or whatever. And it seems, as far back as I can remember, I've been doing things that people generally would say would not work or couldn't do. I couldn't do. The robot, of course, was something that I had as a vision. In fact, when I started working on that, my parents certainly did not tell me that I couldn't do it, or that it wouldn't work, or that I would not succeed. I was fortunate in that they did see me as being different in that sense of, that I was not going to be content just with the normal constraints, if you will, in terms of my imagination. But all through my life, just the robot. We went. Let's see. This was in the '60s when I was working on the robot. It took me about a year to build him, and I wanted to put him in a science fair, but all the science fairs came and went, and because my robot wasn't ready, I couldn't enter them. And there was only one left. It was a engineering competition, Junior Engineering Society competition, held at the University of Alabama in '68. This was just a few years after George Wallace had stood in the door and said no Black students would ever attend that university. We were the only, my school, there was 3 of us from my high school, we were the only Black kids at that competition. And Lonnie won first place. And this was a regional competition with kids from all over the Southeast United States, high school kids. And that was a real moral victory.
So then the University of Alabama came rushing up to you with a scholarship, I guess, huh?
They didn't even ask what my grades were. It was put on by the school engineering, the dean of engineering.
They were probably, do we have to give them the award? Who came in second?
Fortunately, the judges were from industry, and they were more objective.
Can I ask you a question before you go on? Because I love what you're saying. That thing where somebody says you can't do this, but there's something in you that says yes, I can. Can you describe what that feels like to you, or what is that energy in your body that says no, I can do this?
Sometimes it's just an insight that I have that they may not have. I mean, just recognizing that, well, they don't know what I know. Sometimes it's just that simple. Sometimes it's just my willingness to take on a problem and try to solve a problem that where there is no apparent solution. And I think I do more of that now than I used to back then. Back then, I was, a lot of things I worked on was more things to engineering, putting things in, solving problems as they came up. Now I'm taking on some challenges that were, materials don't exist to do what I'm trying to do, for example. And I think about Leonardo da Vinci back in the day when he had this concept of a flying machine for man-powered flight. Well, the technology to do that and make that happen didn't exist, although today we have demonstrated man-powered flight. It took about 500 years to get there.
Yeah.
So it was possible. Da Vinci knew it was possible, but he just didn't have the resources to. So just not knowing any better than to take on the problem and try to solve it. But that does take a amount of confidence, courage, I would say, because there is a risk. I mean, it's not without the possibility of failing, because you don't have all the answers when you start working the problem.
Right.
But you do have enough answers that you feel like, okay, the odds are in my favor. I've got some insights here that suggest that this might be possible, and you start applying what you know and solving the problems as they arise. But it does take some risk. You got to be willing to fail and not succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that feels really right. It feels like my own experience, and it feels like what I've heard many other people say. Can you go? I didn't mean to interrupt because you were talking about going to the university. So the engineering department gave you a full scholarship, and there were only three people of color at the university.
No, I was joking. University of Alabama was not giving anybody any scholarships. They weren't even letting anybody of color in the university.
They didn't even ask me what my grades were. I went to Tuskegee, fortunately, and I had a great time there as well. I had some friends who had gone to that I'd gone to high school with, also went to Tuskegee, and so we were close. And I had a great experience socially and academically at Tuskegee.
Oh, that's great. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the joke. I apologize, because I was just really hoping somebody got enlightened.
No.
Okay.
Not in 1968.
So you went to Tuskegee, and what was it made you choose that place?
Well, I actually had a scholarship at Tuskegee.
Oh, you did?
The dean of math had come down to my high school recruiting students, and I scored well on the SAT, and so he offered me a scholarship.
Actually, I don't know this. Did you have good grades like in school, or were you like didn't care about the academics in the classroom and just sort of wandered through because you were working on your own stuff?
Combination of both.
Classes, math and science, you were great. And English class was a bit
Not so good in English. One semester I came close to all A's, but generally it was a mixture. I was having a lot of fun. But then engineering, there was a limit to how much fun I could have, because academically Tuskegee turned out to be really challenging. In fact, when I got out of school, my first real job, was at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, where I was working with someone who also had a master's in nuclear engineering, and he was from Penn State, and we were put together on a project. And here's where I got to, put my education up against his and compare to see how well I'd done and how well I'd been prepared. And it turned out that it got to the point where he was hiding stuff because he didn't feel like he could compete. So I had been exposed to some things that he didn't know, and so I felt that Tuskegee had prepared me well.
I love that.
Went on to the Air Force, did orbit insertion analysis on the Voyager project.
As the Air Force or at NASA?
That was in the Air Force. I gone through ROTC when I was in the Air Force. I mean, in college, because back then the draft, the Vietnam War was still going on when I started college. I did not want to get drafted out and have to go into the military as enlisted. So I decided to enter ROTC and with the intent of going in as an officer. So I got a commission, got a delay in going on active duty to get my master's degree. And after that, while I was waiting to be called to active duty, I went to work at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. It was one of the nuclear laboratories that the government set up back during World War II to develop the atomic bomb. So,
and to this day, it's still a very renowned laboratory doing research work.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So from there, I was called to active duty, went to what was then the Air Force Weapons Laboratory, but it's now Air Force Research Laboratory, in Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. There, Sandia National Laboratory, which was another one of these national laboratories that the government had set up during World War II timeframe. There, I was doing orbit insertion analysis. We was a member of a nuclear safety group that looked at U.S. space launches that had nuclear power sources, these radioisotope thermoelectric generators that power spacecraft like Voyager and Galileo that go to the outer planets away from the sun, where you don't have enough solar energy to use solar cells. So the idea was to make sure that it was safe to launch the spacecraft. We didn't want the these nuclear materials being released to the biosphere and contaminating the environment. I did some analysis that showed that some predictions that NASA had made regarding the launch sequence were in error. As a result, they had actually gone on record saying that couldn't happen. And so I showed where it could. So as a result, I was invited to go to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, where I left active duty, went to JPL. There I was assigned a power system on the Galileo project.
Wow.
And there,
Galileo's mission was what?
Galileo's mission was to Jupiter. And it used its nuclear power sources again. And I was the power systems engineer responsible for integrating that power source onto the spacecraft. And even doing mission scenarios where we looked at how much power the spacecraft would need to do various functions that it had to accomplish throughout the mission. So I would run all the scenarios, allocate and manage power for all the subsystems and so forth. There we ran into a problem. In fact, that problem existed before I got there. And that was that if there was a failure on the spacecraft, if you had a short circuit and the power bus went down, and there was no power to the systems, the computer in particular, the computer required power in order for the memories to keep their memory. If you lost power to the memory would get wiped out, and then the computer or the spacecraft could solve the problem, could resolve itself, but then there's no program to tell the spacecraft tell the computer that, hey, you're a spacecraft and this way is Earth.
Oh, wow.
So I came up with this memory keep alive power supply idea. And I told the chief systems engineer, when they tell the guy about this idea, they're going to say it won't work. And when they do, let me know. I'll go home and build one in my garage and bring it in and demonstrate it.
I freaking love you. That's so brilliant. I love that.
And
I
sure
love that
enough,
so much.
Sure enough, that was the exact response. Oh, that won't work. You can't do that. And he said, Johnson says you can. So, and in fact, I've got a little shadow box here on my wall where from my supervisor after I left JPL, so told me that people still refer to that as a brilliant idea, and that people ask about it. And one of the people, actually, when I was there, a co-worker came up to me and apologized. Lonnie, I want to apologize to you for what I was saying about your idea. And I looked at him, I said, Pete, what did you say? Oh, never mind.
Oh, in that case, I was one of the ones that knew it would work.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Well, at least he had a good intention to apologize, but maybe just because he thought you knew. That's so funny. Wow. I love just the way your brain works. It's just so cool. It's so fun to just hear your stories. Can I just ask you back a little bit? You know, there were so many people in your time and still who are really thwarted by the racism that exists still in the world. And how is it that you have, I know you said it, you have a certain confidence, but what, is there something about, like, is there something that you can share with people who might be struggling with that can open something up in them that you can think of that you've found for yourself?
Talk a little bit about the STEM program you're doing and how you're trying to inspire.
I think the best way to address that is, by experiencing success. The best thing you can do for a person is to have them experience success, because when they do it, it's not what you're telling them they can do, it's what they experience and realize they can do that really sticks with them. And so I, as McHugh was referring to, I work with kids. When I learned about the first robotics program, in fact, someone called me and asked to come and talk to me about a program that they were hoping I would be interested in. When they came in, they started talking about this robotics program where high school kids build robots. And I said, I'm in. And she started explaining, well, this program has this kind of, I said, I'm in, I get it. She kept trying, I said, no, you don't get it, I understand this, Finally, she realized that I really did get it. So I work with kids now. And in fact, up until this year, I was on the board of directors of First Robotics. I'm on the board of directors for Georgia First still. And one of the things that I think I feel particularly good about is the fact that, in First Robotics, the minority participation is about, across the country, is about 4%. We set up our program here with the idea of, I partnered with the 100 Black Men of Atlanta with the idea of going into the inner city and really introducing this program to kids who otherwise would see this as science and something that they couldn't participate in or wouldn't be interested in, and trying to address this whole notion of entertainment or athletics, but science, as Dean Kamen says routinely, this is a game where every player can turn pro, in terms of engineering, and it's not just engineering. There's business aspects to it. It really is a comprehensive program. But I was saying the national participation for minorities in this program is about 4%. Here in Georgia, it's about 30%. So we've had huge impact, literally across the state, and getting kids interested in science and technology just by having fun doing it. So they're learning STEM and doing things without seeing it as hard math and science kind of hard work.
You mentioned the word that to me is one of the key words for anybody doing anything good, which is fun. People learn better when they have fun. People have more fun when they have fun. people have better relationships when they have fun. People have better finances happen more easily when they have fun. So I love that you're making the school and the education of the robotics more fun. And is that something that is a model that can be taught to other states or other school districts that you know of?
Well, that's the beauty of the program. It literally is a program where all you really need is just a desire to get involved. And there are stories that really touch my heart. For example, this one kid was on a team. They had been successful, but all of her teammates graduated. She's now in the 12th grade. The teacher who was their coach and had actually coordinated the program moved to another school, and she still wanted to participate in First Robotics. So she went and rounded up some other friends and then convinced the teacher to be the coach, and they started a robotics program. It was all her initiative, and they made it to the state championship, which was really, really cool. We've had all girls robotics teams. In fact, we have all girls team here on site. We have a team that is a team of refugees from countries like Somalia and other places that speak 9 different languages. Very, very diversified group of kids, and we're all having a great time.
Thank you. That really moves me. That really moves me, touches my heart. I felt chills all over my body. I really love that you're doing that, because, kids are so important, and everybody having a chance to learn and to have fun learning and to have a coach and a team, is just beautiful. I love that. I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much. I love your brilliance and your your social brilliance, because there's a scientific brilliance, but there's also social brilliance, and that's really a good combination, in a person. So you created a really cool toy that I have given to people when they were kids, and I still like it. So can you talk about the toys that you have invented?
Yeah, well, most people are aware that I invented the Super Soaker water gun. And, this goes back to my comments about not knowing it better. I was working on a new type of heat pump that would use water as a working fluid instead of Freon, because Freon is bad for the environment. So I was getting a real challenge because I felt that this is a problem I could solve, but come up with an idea or a solution. And I thought what could be better for the environment than water, So I started working on this, and I was machined some nozzles, and I was at home in the bathroom and hooked these nozzles to the bathroom sink and shot this stream of water across the bathroom into the tub. And it was so powerful and satisfying. And the curtains in the bathroom would start to swirl in the airflow. I said, geez, that powerful water gun would be a lot of fun. So I decided to put my heat pump project aside and start designing and build this high performance water gun. So I applied my engineering know-how, because I couldn't hook up to the bathroom sink anymore, obviously. So there were certain drivers that, it needed to be something that could hold a lot of water, or something that a small kid could operate and really take up to high pressure so that the water could come out with a lot of force. And so I applied engineering know-how to design this gun, and then I started building it. I had to machine all the little components and then put all the components together, and finally got it. So I can remember when I got it, finally made it and pumped it up for the first time, and I was wondering how it was going to work, if it really was going to live up to my expectation. Pulled the trigger, and it was really, really cool. So that was the easy part. The hard part was getting it from my working prototype to commercialization, and that took about 7 years.
Oh,
It was a lot of false starts. Everybody I showed it to was excited and liked it. The first company, the owner of the company, no, the first one was I was going to manufacture it myself, not knowing any better. My whole career had been in the Air Force and JPL and worked on major government projects. So I went to a plastic injection molding company that manufactured parts and showed him my gun. Oh, that's really cool. And he came over with an estimate and came back and told me what it was going to cost. He said it's going to cost about $200,000 to get the first 1,000 guns off the line, off the production line. And I thought to myself, I don't have $200,000. And I also don't know who would pay $200 for a water gun. I didn't understand anything about amortization or tooling or any of the business aspects, but I knew that equation, my simple equation, wasn't working. So I decided there's some things that I did not know that I needed to learn. And so I decided I would license it, and with the idea of learning from that process how to take a product to market. So the first company I talked to, the owner sold the company, and then that owner took it public, and then someone else bought it. And I kept finding myself talking to a new inventor relations person. They ended up with the prototype in Hong Kong at one point, and they couldn't figure out how to put it together, how it worked. They asked me to make another one because they'd taken it apart. So I made another one, and they were just a lot of false starts. So I ended up talking to another company.
And financially, you're struggling all along the way here.
Yeah, I'm in the Air Force.
Yeah,
I'm in the Air Force at this point. And so I had a regular salary.
Okay.
That's my day job.
Thank goodness. Keep your day job. Maybe that's one of the lessons.
That was one of the lessons.
You can still chase your dream while you keep your day job.
I forgot that lesson, though. Anyway, see, the other company was a company called Jtech. I was showing them a water-propelled airplane. It went on market as my first product to market was actually a product called Jamming Jet. It was a water-propelled airplane that you put a water bottle in and pump it up, and the water would shoot out the back of the plane and propel it into flight. And it was really, really cool. Except,
I love it.
except the company manufactured the plane broke from the factory, so they wanted it. It flew very well, but the problem was they felt that it flew too well, so they wanted to fly in circles so the kid wouldn't lose it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Really, really cool of them.
Otherwise, you got one launch and it's into the neighbor's yard.
Bye.
Glider, so once it got up, it would just continue to glide. And so, but what they did was that when the airplane's turning, one wing's moving through the air faster than the other, so
Right.
that wing has a little bit more lift, so it rolls over and dives into the ground right out of the box. They manufactured 60,000 airplanes, $1 million in TV advertising, and flopped right out of the box, every one of them.
So you had the version that just took off into the wild blue yonder, or the kamikaze version. Those are your two choices.
We only had a kamikaze. It was the only thing that ended up. But I mean, I tried to, call those guys and say, don't do it that way. My thought was, hey, let the kid loose. If you had a great time, you'll buy another one.
Or have an adventure in the woods looking for it.
Yeah, it's part of the fun. And so that all of that went on from 82 to 89, 7 years. Then in 1989, I went to Toy Fair in New York and literally was walking the hall looking for someone to talk to. And someone suggested I go talk to the people at Laramie, a guy named Bob Kersey. And this was a toy fair where, the buyers and manufacturers were there showing their products, and the showrooms were secretive because they didn't want other companies to knock them off. And so to get into a company's showroom, you had to know somebody or be invited in. And so he told me to tell him that Bob Kersey sent you. And so that was enough to get me in to talk to the vice president of the company. And he said, that sounds interesting. I can't look at it now. This is the vice president of the company, but if you ever in Philadelphia, would love to look at your product and consider it. So I said, okay, great. I'll contact you in Philadelphia. And as I was standing up to leave, he said, but don't make a special trip. You know what he was saying.
And you look down at your long list of reasons to go to Philadelphia, and there were no other reasons.
So I went back home. By now I'm back in California, actually. And I started working on the gun. I built the gun. This is the first time I put the bottle on top. And as soon as I got it finished and working, I called him up. I said, I'm going to be in Philadelphia next week. Are you available? So, of course, I made a special trip. That was his way of saying that, the odds are we're not going to take a product. We have people talking to us all the time. But I got there, and it was really classic situation where I was sitting out in the waiting room with my suitcase with my thing in it. And the reception was there behind this glass or plexiglass or window. And I was waiting to be called in. And they were having a big meeting inside and everything. So it was just classic. Finally, they said, okay, Johnson, they'll see you now. And so I got up, go in, and so, okay, what do you have? So I opened my suitcase up, pull the gun out, put some water in. And I think I had the water put in there before I went in there. They said, okay, well, does it work? And this gun, they had manufactured water guns before, and this is one of the reasons they were interested in me, was actually making battery-powered water guns. So when I pumped it up and shot it across the conference room, the president of the company was like, wow. It was really a lot more than what they expected. And so it stood on its own merit. And obviously the rest is history. By 10 years after I got the idea, by 1992, it was the #1 selling toy in the country.
I love that. And you know what you said, when you shot it the first time into your bathtub, it was a satisfying feeling and it was really fun. And again, I think when somebody starts with something fun, even though it might have taken some time, fun really leads you to something good, or at least fun with this thing, So I love it. I love it. And then go ahead. You were going to say something, and I keep.
Yeah. So when Super Soaker became successful, I said, okay, I want to be the king of all toy guns. So here's my vision, right? I'm going to make this vision a reality. So the only other toy guns out there were the Nerf dart guns, and so they had the market. Hasbro was selling their guns. And so there was no reason for them to do a deal with me. But I started making Nerf dart guns, and I made a whole line of small ones, medium-sized, large ones. So I had an entire product line, and they all worked better than what Hasbro had at the time. So when I went in and presented it to them, it was like, I think my assumption is that I intimidated them into doing a deal with me because they didn't want me to take my product line to a competitor that could eat into their market share. So we entered a contract. And my line, in strike, became the #1 selling category in Nerf. And so I reached my goal of being the king of all toy guns. That was but now I'm not in the toy business anymore. I'm in the energy business.
Yeah, I love that. Before we get to the part that you're doing now, Mike had said you'd gone into a lot of government offices trying
Yeah,
to share what you're doing now with these people.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
want to share about that a little bit?
One that comes to mind was the Office of Naval Research. Um, I had this description of what the Jtech was and how it worked. I didn't have a working model, so I couldn't demonstrate it the way I did the water gun. But I'd done all analysis of physics and so forth. Everything was there. I'm at the Office of Naval Research in Virginia making a presentation, and to a room full of scientists and engineers. And then one guy stood up in the room, said, "That won't work. How dare you come in here claiming you can do such a thing? Read the Osteryoung report. We've looked at this technology." And I'm like, oh, geez. I'm standing there, of course. At that point, the room got silent. Nobody really was paying attention to me anymore. I'm standing there in front of them trying to do a PowerPoint. It was very embarrassing. So I'm feeling like, how could I miss such a thing? And on the way home, I'm thinking, I can't wait to get back to the office so I can look up this Osteryoung report. And I got the report, and it was all about regenerative fuel cells. And the Jtech was not in there. He was wrong, but yet I got embarrassed. He didn't believe it would work. He won that conversation, and I mean that story of Jtech was like that for many years. But this is a story of perseverance and not giving up. The water gun took about 10 years. This is hard science. It's a lot more difficult. So
Right.
taking longer is not so surprising, but it does require commitment when you're trying to do something different. You're swimming upstream. They used to kid me like that about that. I can't use that expression. But anyway, I used to accuse me of swimming upstream and just always going in the wrong direction.
Well, some of the most brilliant fish in the world, salmon, swim upstream. They're very bright
Very
creatures.
good, and they're very healthy. That's right.
Generally, unless they have plastic or radiation or pesticides or heavy metals in them, they're very healthy.
What I'm having for dinner now. I thought I was just getting some omega oil and going on my way.
That was
But
the whole idea.
I better check for a few other things first.
So what are you focused on exactly? Like, talk about Jtech a little bit.
I'm focused on the environment and the need for energy. I mean, energy is a source of so many problems. I mean, we all use energy because we use energy to do things that we need to do. Lights, transportation. Energy consumption is a reflection of quality of life. So as we get more sophisticated, even our computers use a lot of energy. Server farms, it's a big deal now about how much energy server farms consume. So as we continue to improve our quality of life, we consume more and more energy. And there are a lot of countries in the world that have not gone yet through the full industrial revolutions as we have here, and they're going to consume more and more energy. And all of that consumption, if they do it the way we've been doing it so far, is going to be terrible for the environment. So my focus has been on, true to form, tackling some hard problems that are bigger than me. Whether I can succeed or not, at least I'll feel like I spent my life attacking some things that were challenges that were worth attacking.
Can I just say, based on your track record, I feel total confidence in your success.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, he's actually proven it now. I mean, for the longest time, it was doing the math, doing the physics, doing the whiteboard, doing the calculations. But with advances in material science over the last decade, he's actually been able to prove it. And in fact, last November, we built actual physical demo devices that prove that this is real and has a chance to completely change the way we think about energy production.
The neat thing is an engine, more efficient than existing engines, all of them. And what's really, really magic about it is that it has no moving mechanical parts. It's all solid state.
All we need is a heat
And
source.
more efficient. So any heat source, solar, waste heat from other industrial processes, geothermal heat, even nuclear. I mean, it doesn't matter where the heat comes from, but we can produce power directly and more efficiently than any other source.
So the things that is moving are the molecules as opposed to as opposed to the components, the molecules of the different substances within your project.
We use hydrogen and proton conductive membranes, so it works just like any other engine. You know, your car engine, you pull the air in at ambient temperature, you compress it, you inject the fuel and heat the air up and expand at high temperature. That high temperature expansion gives you a lot more work than it takes to compress it at low temperature. So this engine works the same way, except instead of pistons or turbines to do the compression and expansion process, we use electrochemistry. And we use hydrogen as a working fluid.
Ooh, that's so sexy. It's so exciting. It is so sexy because it's really, hydrogen is one of the most abundant, if I'm not mistaken, I think hydrogen is one of the most abundant things in the universe. So it's hard to, and then it doesn't really go into waste, because once it's done with its job in your engine, it's got to go back into the.
Actually, the hydrogen circulates inside. It's never consumed. It's just continuously. So the only thing we need is heat from anywhere. Even body heat could produce electricity.
So is it using, when you say heat, tell me more, is it using a heat differential, or what's the?
Yes, so you remember what I said about compressing at low temperature, so your air come in, you compress it, and then you heat up and expand at high temperature. So your body temperature is different from the ambient air, so you can use that temperature difference even to charge your cell phone, imagine. So that from all the way, a small application like that to all the way to a major utility power plant, just much more efficient.
And what about cars? You probably work with cars or with airplanes, because airplanes are even above the clouds, so they would have a heat differential from the outside to the inside, right?
Yes, but we're going to make those electric.
Oh, so
we'll generate the heat, generate the electricity from solar or other renewable sources, and we'll use batteries to power cars and airplanes. And our batteries, we're working on batteries that will store up to 10 times the energy of lithium ions. So imagine airplanes and cars going much further on a single charge. Instead of 300 miles, imagine 2,000 or 3,000 miles on a single charge.
Wow, that could traverse America.
That's the lithium air technology we're developing.
Wow.
I did an analysis a few years back on looking at what it takes to fly a Boeing 777 class airplane. Just in jet fuel cost. It's a bit more now because gas prices are going up.
Yeah.
But $18.72 a mile just in fuel costs. $18.72, almost $19 a mile just to fly there. That's fuel. That's not engine costs, plane costs, or crew anything, just in fuel. But at present Georgia Power utility rates, I could fly that same plane for about $4.20 a mile if it's electric, and I have a battery that has the energy density of the battery we're working on. So it changes the game literally.
Woo! This is so thrilling. Wow, I feel like chills all through my whole, whatever this is, my whole body. This is so fantastic, and it feels so again, freaking brilliant and fun. You know, it feels so fun. I can imagine just, you know, the opportunity that is here for people who are interested in supporting you guys or in using what you create. When you said you put it into, you know, that it became a real experiment, can you tell me more what actually happened? Like, how did you see it actually come to life?
So we actually built a unit and applied heat and got electricity out and turned on a light bulb and generated power curves to show the efficiency curves that were basically what we theoretically predicted they would be. So
yeah, essentially we just had a hot plate like you might have, you know, in your kitchen or your dorm room. We set a Jtech device on top of it. We turned on the hot plate. We had wires on the other end with a light bulb, and as the temperature reached predicted efficiencies, the light bulb lit up. It was an Edison moment.
I love it. And then, so the hot plate is the same as a factory furnace, or the same as a solar panel in the heat, or that's basically the translation of that experiment. It's someplace where it's heated, right?
That's right. It's just the heat source. That's right. So the electricity is produced from the heat.
What's the next steps that you guys need to do to get this out to, everybody?
Well, now that we've demonstrated it, we've got a plan to start building prototype applications. One of the things, there's so much waste heat in the world that we've got to sort of pick and choose our projects. So we're going to select a couple projects. We're going to scale the devices to larger size. We're going to increase the energy density that each device can produce. And I think over the next 3 years, we'll have devices that are actually out in field application use. And once people see that, I think it should just really take off.
It's like the super soaker across the room.
Yep.
One of the neat things about the technology is that it can operate on very, very low temperature heat, which is something that existing devices cannot do. We can operate on low temperature heat sources, waste heat from other processes, waste heat from factories and other sources. That geothermal is generally low temperature heat.
Right.
You can do that cost effectively, and that's really one of the major advantages of the technology.
That's so fascinating. Well, I would imagine, wow, that's so fascinating. The question, let me see if I can understand something. When you said you're going to increase the electrical output, does that mean you're going to add more hydrogen and more proton membranes, or how do you increase the?
I knew you were going to react to that when he said power density. I said she's going to ask about that.
Yeah. Well, because I have a curious mind. I have a nerdy side. Nobody sees it hardly, but I was a science nerdy girl, so I love this stuff.
Yeah. So given a certain amount of energy, power that you want to produce, the idea is to make the device much smaller and get the same amount of power. So we're making it smaller so it can be more practical.
So it's not a matter of more hydrogen. A lot of it is really in the membrane materials, with the way that we stack them, the way we bond them, the density of the material that allows for better hydrogen flow. So those are all things that we're working on currently.
And Mike, I know that you're partnered with Lonnie, and you're the CEO.
I am the CEO. We don't worry about titles too much around here, but
yeah, well,
somebody has to be.
Mike is the guy that's going to take it from the laboratory into production. So I'm the scientist and the tinkerer. He's the business guy.
I love that. Well, how did you get involved with Jtech?
I'd met Lonnie a long time ago. He was making batteries, and I was trying to make affordable electric cars. And I guess my career has been marked by being able to see important technology really early on and figuring out how do you actually build that and get it into people's hands to make their life better. So early on, I was one of the first internet guys. I had an ISP with a friend called MindSpring that became the second largest ISP in the world behind AOL. Then digital music was a bit of a side run for me. That was a lot of fun. Then I got really obsessed with the idea of trying to make an affordable electric car. And I worked close to a decade on that. And early on, people just thought it was folly. It was a lot like some of Lonnie's early days where, I would talk about the importance of electric cars and people would yawn and say, we're not going to have electric cars. And I get snide comments like, well, if it's going to go very far, I hope you have a long extension cord. But here we are now, about a decade later. And of course, there's electric cars everywhere. Major manufacturers are committing to it. So I early on decided that I was going to commit my time and energy to trying to find things that could be big and be important for the planet or its people. And a mutual friend told me about what Lonnie was doing, and we caught up a couple of years ago. And I was intrigued by the idea of what he was doing, because certainly energy poverty and the need for new green renewable energy is one of the biggest problems we have on the planet. if I could spend my time and energy trying to help solve that, I was all in. But one of the important things to me was I needed to try and understand it so that I could tell other people. And Lonnie doesn't suffer fools well when he's trying to explain something. You have to kind of learn it at its physics and chemistry level. And while Lonnie was all aces in those classes in school, me not so much. So I remember Lonnie coming in early one day and Lonnie trying to explain how it worked, and he's on the whiteboard and he's like writing formulas, and he gets about halfway through and I go, you lost me there, Lonnie. And Lonnie gets frustrated and he starts over, only this time he's doing it twice as loud. And I'm like, Lonnie, it's not an auditory problem. I heard you fine the first time. It's a cerebral problem. I'm trying to get through it. So he was frustrated with me and we kept plowing through. And one of the things that I think I've been particularly dedicated to is if I want to learn about something, I'll go read everything I can about it. And that's something you can do on your own. It's just bury
that's one of
yourself.
the things that impressed me was that, I talked to McHugh sometimes in the afternoons or even in the morning. And I said, geez, he's been studying. He's been reading. I mean, that's really cool.
And you can see the difference in McHugh, Mike McQuary, you could see the difference in McHugh because he was able to understand something you were saying, or he was able to express something differently. How did you notice it?
I could tell he had been reading and studying independently, and he's gotten, it was very apparent to me that he was really studying and doing his homework and coming up the curve, independent of his conversations with me.
And I think that's an important takeaway with, in the advent of the internet now, there's so much information out there that if you want to learn about something and you commit yourself to it and bury yourself in it, the sources are out there. And suddenly I was conversant in hydrogen membranes and pressure differentials, and really started feeling comfortable about it. And the light bulb went off for me as to how big this could be. And I tell Lonnie all the time, my job now is to make the Super Soaker a footnote to his biography when they write it. Because this is something I think it's going to be transformational. We truly do come in every day and, I'll end a meeting by saying, all right, let's go solve this problem. Let's go make the world a better place. And that's the people we're dedicated. We got so many smart people. I work every day with Lonnie's son, David, who's equally smart. We got Ted Campbell. I mean, I heard one time somebody saying, if you think you're the smartest guy in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. I don't ever have to worry about that. Anywhere I walk in the building, whether it's the lobby, whether it's the laboratory, whether it's conference room, I'm never the smartest guy in the room. The only time when I'm feeling a little insecure, I want to feel like smartest guy in the room, I just go in the bathroom by myself and close the door. Because that's really the only time I'm on premise where I'm the smartest guy in the room. Man.
That's hilarious.
Learning every day, and I just feel like it's important, and we're dedicating ourselves to doing something that's really important. And I think we've caught the imagination now of some like-minded investors who are going to see how transformational this can be. And they're really going to join forces with us and help us take this to the next level. It's really exciting. And again, I get to work with this guy every day, and we have fun. I mean, every single day we laugh about something. I mean, while we're dedicated to this, we're head down. I certainly try and make it a point every day to make sure he's laughing and having fun, because there's lots of stress and pressure to try and get this done. And we feel it every day. And in any startup company, you're under the pressure of trying to make sure you're funded enough and that you can actually hit the deadlines to build out the devices. And then you've got to get other people excited about it and explain it to them. And it can be really stressful. So I think we do a great job of complementing each other with a sense of humor when we need it, and try to pick each other up.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the technology would not exist if it were not for Super Soaker, because Super Soaker, when all the naysayers and I was having a tough time getting money from the government or other sources, I had the revenue from Super Soaker and literally invested everything I had into this technology and the battery technology. People ask me all the time, well, why you made all this money on Super Soaker, why didn't you just lay back and enjoy life? But I am enjoying life. I'm having an impact. I'm doing something that I feel is worthwhile, and I'm applying myself. And that to me is quality, quite honestly. And I don't, I think McQueary would tell you now, even the financial stresses that we're experiencing while we're waiting on this deal that we're putting together to come through, that's just par for the course, basically, because we've got an important mission that we're trying to accomplish, and and staying focused on that is what's important. And bridging the gap when we have shortfalls is just what we have to do.
Yeah. And that is, to me, that's what I've seen over and over again with people who are successful. Everybody says, no, you can't do it, but they do it. Everybody says, oh, I'm not sure if I can invest in this and then they go, oh my God, I got to invest in this. It's like, it's so consistent where people can't see things. And then, well, all of a sudden you see it and then you go, oh yeah, that's so cool. And you guys are on the leading edge, which I love. And then Mike, you mentioned that David is Lonnie's son and you guys are working together. What's that like for you?
Oh, it's real cool. I have two sons working for me.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, one's over in the battery side and one's with me in Jtech.
And they're both engineers. And I have another project I'm about to start my oldest daughter on with me.
Is she an engineer also?
She's not an engineer, but she's very creative. So she's artsy. She does. She's a teacher. She's interested in. She does a lot of sewing and creative things like that. So this will be a neat project with her.
Ah, it
So,
sounds
yeah.
like
Yeah.
it sounds like you want to give to the world. You want to give to your children. It sounds like you just have such a good heart, both of you. I mean, and to have the foresight, about the electric cars and all of that stuff that you did, Mike, and to see Lonnie and to go, I know this is something good.
I can confidently say we've got it figured out. We've just got to follow the steps that are going to make this a complete game changer when it comes to renewable energy and future energy source for the planet. So we've got it figured out. The last 2 years, we had a lot of hurdles. We got through it. And it's frankly why we haven't, done a lot of interviews like this or a lot of press, because it drives me nuts when people hype some new technology that isn't real. And certainly, the saga of Theranos and the promises that were made around that and the investors that went along for a ride that wasn't real. It was important for us to make sure we hit certain milestones so that we understood what was real. We've never made any false claims, and that people could come in and see it for themselves. And Lonnie used to always joke, one of the first things they're going to do when this happens is they're going to look under the table and see if the light bulb's plugged in.
When we did our first demo with, I had actually, because of my background with NASA, I knew that this technology would be really, really a game changer for these nuclear powered spacecraft, because what they're using now has very, very low efficiency. So I went and did a round of meetings with people at NASA. Finally made it to NASA Glenn, and they sent some people out from Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab to look at the technology. And so we set up a demo, and they literally got under the table and looked under the table to make sure we didn't have any extra
Something
wires
plugged in somewhere.
That's hilarious.
Literally looked under the table.
But people that have been in the field for a long time and understand what we're doing, they're pretty amazed. There was somebody who had been working he's with an investment group, and he was doing the scientific due diligence, and he's 30 years in thermoelectrics. And when we walked through their presentation, explained it to him, at the end of it, he just said, I understand what you're doing. And if you can make this happen in the world, Lonnie's going to win a Nobel Prize. And
oh, let's do that.
absolutely think that's
Thank you for
Yeah.
your vote.
So I told him to start working on his acceptance speech, and I'll be in the lab trying to make it happen for him.
Yeah, Lonnie, what you can do is you get something like a hairbrush and you look in the mirror and you start working on your acceptance speech and do it, act it out, you know, and see the crowd. Imagine
There's some
receiving the
rehearsals
award.
in front of the mirror. And
Make it real.
Yeah, make it real. Make it real, really, because that stuff happens. That stuff happens. That's been the story of my life.
Now Lonnie's gonna be in the bathroom in front of the mirror, and I'm not even gonna be the smartest guy when I go to the bathroom. He's gonna be standing there in the mirror giving his acceptance speech
I'm
practices.
so sorry, McHugh. I'm so sorry. Dang. Now, okay, so I just kind of said, you know, how I have such confidence in you, and you said you don't like to blow things up. Is it okay that I said that, or should I cut it out of the?
No, it's time to tell the world about it.
Okay, cool.
We built the demo devices. They operate exactly along the predicted efficiencies on the physics and chemistry that Lonnie had plotted out a decade ago. It's real and it's undeniable.
And we've got a roadmap for how we get to a product. So it's just a matter of, it's engineering at this point.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, it feels undeniable. It feels like it's inevitable. It feels like there's yeah, it's undeniable. It's done. It feels like it's really done. It's really done. It's just there's a few steps that'll come in place, but like I can feel it. I feel the exhilaration. Will you guys invite me to the Nobel Prize award show?
Absolutely.
Well, you know,
go ahead and pick out a dress.
What you can do is come in May. I'm going to be inducted into the Inventors Hall of Fame, so you can come to that if you like.
Yeah.
I would love that. Oh my God, that'd be so fun. God, I've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've been to all the Hall of Fames, but
inducted in May. In May in Washington, D.C., he'll be inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame.
oh my God, that'd be so fun. I'd love that. Well,
It's important to note before we go to how many patents do you currently have that you've
Over 140 at this point.
140 patents that he's patented through the years.
wow. Wow. And is there anything else that you want to share, either one of you, with us before we stop? I don't even want to stop ever, but
go next and then you close with your thoughts. I'd like to invite people to come work with us. I mean, we're going to need the best and the brightest engineers, people that have, you know, backgrounds in thermoelectrics, people who've worked in hydrogen fuel cells. We need those talents. I mean, I know we've got a roadmap, but there's going to be a whole lot of hard work to get there. We would really like for it to happen in our lifetime, and that means accelerating the path that this happens. So, you know, if people see this or hear this and are interested, just, you know, reach out to us through our website. We're going to be hiring a lot of people over the next couple of years, and we need people who understand how important this is and can bring their genius to the table to help us make it happen faster.
I love that. I got a lot of friends I'm going to send this to. I got a lot of physics friends, engineering friends, basically physics and engineering friends.
You know, and also as a follow-on legacy, or however you want to look at it, you know, I mentioned the robotics program that I'm involved with, and we have a Johnson STEM Activity Center here is what we designated it as, and we're expanding that even beyond robotics and getting kids interested in science and technology. We touch about 10,000 kids a year, and having them come in fact, when we started the program, the initial workspace we set aside for the kids, we put a window in the wall so that when they're over there doing their thing, they can actually look through the window and see real scientists doing their thing. And it really has worked out really well. We partnered with a guy named Bart Suderith, who is just totally dedicated. He literally has been going all over the state and bringing kids into this program, and it's been very, very effective. So we've had success there, and being successful with this will just allow us to take all of that activity to another level. I think that engineers do bring magic to the world. If it were not for the problem solving that we do in humans as human beings, our quality of life would be very different. So we continue to push and improve quality of life, and we'll bring along some young minds that can continue that process.
I love that so much. And, you know, it's really true because engineering is sort of the art of how things work. And there's an artistry to it, you know, and the perseverance and the fun and all of that. So I love what you're doing. And I love the idea of that window so people can see. That's so brilliant that the students can see you guys actually doing the work, because people pick up stuff, you know, a lot of teachers teach what they know, but not what they do. And you're giving these kids the opportunity to see what you actually do. And that transparency, I think, is going to create visions for them about what they can do, and the capacity to pick up things, even on that like subconscious level where you go, oh, he's doing this. Nobody said to do that, but I see it, you know, and they might not even recognize that they see it, but it's something that's, you know, we do so much sort of automatically that you don't even know you're doing. So you don't know that it's essential for what you're creating, but somebody on the outside can go, oh, he didn't mention that, but that's.
Had kids go on to college whose siblings have been in and out of jail, you know, but we've been able to rescue those guys. We have one student who lost both her parents, but because of this program as an anchor, managed to finish college. She's now a school teacher. And she actually has her kids involved in the robotics program as well. We've had a lot of really, really, really huge successes.
Lonnie's touched a lot of people's lives along the way.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like you have such a beautiful heart. Both of you, you have such beautiful hearts. You care so much about people. And it's just beautiful. And I just feel so honored and so much reverence and so much admiration and respect and appreciation, because I know that you are creating something that will benefit all of us. There's not any person on this planet that won't benefit from what you're creating, it sounds like.
Karen, it's also apparent that you have a beautiful heart. So thank you. And thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. Awesome. Well, thank you both. And thank you, everybody who stayed tuned to Stories We Love. We really appreciate you. I'll have all the websites and all the things that they talked about, so you can click on, especially if you're an engineer or a physicist or some kind of scientist that can help. That would be awesome. And thank you both. I just really appreciate you both so very much. And thank you, everyone.
Take care.
I know.